All right. Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out. A little background on the Red Rose Roundtable, how this all got started. One day I was having a conversation with Peter, and we were talking about how even the most perfect plan from our firm has gaps, has holes in them that maybe the estate plan can't actually fill. We were talking about how if a person doesn't have a healthy window of time ahead of them, how do you address that? How do you cover someone that says, I think I can stay healthy 3 years, but 5 years isn't going to happen? So we started talking about long-term care insurance and the costs of it and the benefits of it, when you might use it, whatever. And that led to this whole big discussion about other gaps and other problems that even the two of us couldn't fill. So maybe we needed to bring in a third person or fourth person. It kind of snowballed from there. And we got to a point where we started bringing in professionals into the conversation from a whole variety of fields. So that's how the Red Rose kind of thing got started. Typical goals that we see for estate planning are not be a burden or leave a mess for our family, protect assets to make sure that we actually have something at the time of our passing in order to leave to our loved ones, avoid probate, and minimize taxes. I think it's kind of funny when people say, I don't want to be a burden. I don't think anybody really is a burden when they're leaving financial assets to you. I wouldn't think that, if I was receiving something for free from my parents, that I would ever say, man, they really burdened me with this. But what they mean is the probate process can be very lengthy. You're tied up in courts for a year or more. I even have some clients that are sitting on the second, third year of the probate process. So that can be a little messy, or kids are fighting because they disagreed with the terms of a will, and wills are easy to kind of poke holes in. That's the burden that we're talking about there. It's just kind of a messy estate plan, or maybe not doing any at all. So it just kind of is left to the family to sort it all out because the parents didn't do any will. Proper estate planning ensures that there won't be a mess. That means setting up a will or setting up a trust, depending on the person's circumstances. Having a power of attorney in place. To me, this is the single most important thing that an adult can do. Every single person over the age of 18 in the state of Pennsylvania should have a power of attorney. The reason for that is that a will is great if you die. If you don't die, the will does nothing. So I could be a multimillionaire if I'm incapacitated. And just for a perfect example, I was in a bad motorcycle accident 10 years ago in the hospital with a head collar on and a brain injury. Nobody could act on my finances while I was in the hospital. My bills would not be paid if I didn't have somebody designated as a power of attorney. The state of Pennsylvania doesn't have a default power of attorney for us when it comes to financial and legal decision making. So nobody, not my parents, not my spouse, nobody would be able to act on my finances without a power of attorney. Healthcare directives. This is for us, it's a combination of your living will and your healthcare power of attorney. It gives someone the ability to act if you're incapacitated for your healthcare decisions, but it also gives them a set of instructions on what you would want done in that situation if you were unable to speak for yourself. Something that I like to point out there, Pennsylvania does have a default decision maker. It's your next of kin. But if you ask people who are your next of kin, you're going to get varying answers. Is it your spouse? Is it your parents? Is it your children? Most people don't actually know. So I think it'd be better to get a document in place that says, I want this person to make my healthcare decisions, and this is what I'd like them to do when they're put into that position. For me, my default decision makers right now would be my parents. And I know for a fact that my parents could not carry out my wishes. My mom would never be able to pull the plug on me, even if I had it in writing that she was my decision maker and that's what I wanted. I just know my mom and she wouldn't be able to do it. So I always advise people to not just choose somebody that you trust, but somebody who's able to carry out your actual wishes. It's more than just setting up a set of documents. So I heard someone say one time that documents are not a plan. So you can come into a law firm and create your will, create your power of attorney, but if you don't coordinate the rest of your life to that set of documents, then it actually doesn't do anything for you. I think a lot of my clients are surprised to find out that they have a will and not a single asset they own actually passes through the will. They've gone to their financial advisor and they've set up a beneficiary designation of those accounts. They've gone to their bank and they've set up a transfer on death for those accounts. If they don't own any real estate, that's everything. That's all their assets flowing to whoever their beneficiary designation is. And too often what we see is, let's say my oldest son turns 18 and I make him the beneficiary of all my accounts, but my youngest son's not 18 yet. I don't go back and change it when he turns 18. 100% of my assets flows to my older son. And I have this will that says it gets split 50-50, but it never touches any of those financial assets. My oldest son gets a windfall and my youngest son gets left out. So you actually need to take your financial assets and your life and kind of blend it with your estate plan to make sure that it matches your wishes. Informing your family is important. Having them know where the documents are, who the firm is that has the original, who to contact when something happens. If your family members aren't your POA or aren't your healthcare decision makers, they're aware that you're incapacitated, but they need to contact whoever it is that's supposed to be acting in those roles. And keeping your plan up to date. A lot of people use the set it and forget it method, what we call the transactional method. You go to an attorney, you get your documents, and they say, thank you for business, send your kids our way when you die. And then they never see them again. Some of my clients that come in here, they don't know where their old attorney is. They don't know if they still practice. They're bringing in documents that are a dusty old trifold. They pull them out, they blow the dust off. It smells like mothballs. Like, obviously, that's not an up-to-date estate plan. It's not up to date with the law, and it might not be up to date with that person's family. Sadly, people pass away before us, people that we've named as our executor, people that we've named as our power of attorney, people that we said we're going to receive our things when we pass away, and we don't update the documents to reflect that. And then hopefully it's the other way around. Hopefully it's more grandchildren are being born, new family members are being added, and we need to work them into the estate plan and keep it up to date. We have some key tax concerns. We kind of jokingly say during our other presentation that it's not about death and taxes, but there are some key tax concerns. The first is the federal gift and estate tax. Every individual is allowed to give away $13.61 million during their lifetime or leave that amount behind before they'll pay a single dollar in federal estate tax. I actually refer to this as the nonsense number. It's so big that for the majority of my clients, it's total nonsense. I currently don't have any clients that are even applicable to the federal estate tax. You also get this second nonsense number, $18,000 per year per person without actually touching the 13.61 million. So I can give 18,000 to each of my kids and each of their spouses without even touching the 13.61 million. So you can imagine after a bunch of years, I can actually turn that 13.61 million into 14 or 15 million that I can give away without paying federal estate taxes. Where this number becomes an issue is that people confuse the IRS tax rules with Medicaid penalty rules. That 18,000 is absolutely a Medicaid penalty. If I give 18,000 to each of my kids and then I go into a nursing home within 5 years, I will not get paid for my care. My care will not be taken care of by Medicaid for $36,000 worth of time. That could be somewhere between 2 and 3 months, depending on the penalty divisor. So we should not confuse two totally different laws, IRS tax laws, Medicaid rules. The Pennsylvania inheritance tax ranges from 4.5% to 15%. 4.5% is up and down the family tree. So parents, grandparents, down to children and grandchildren, 12% to siblings and 15% to anyone else. Anyone else includes unmarried couples, nieces and nephews, and total strangers are all lumped into the same tax category there. I've left out spouses. Spouses are 0% tax. The reason why we say 0% instead of exempt is because at one point in our history, it was taxed. So there is the potential that it would come back. It's not exempt. It's currently listed as a 0% tax. There's a second tax listed here, the capital gains tax, between 15 and 37%. The reason I point this out is because it's actually in conflict with the inheritance taxes. Where we see this most often is with real estate. If I wanted to try to avoid the inheritance tax, I use the example of my grandmother and the family farm. My grandmother's 91 years old, still lives on our orchard that she acquired in 1955. Yeah, her purchase price, her basis for that orchard is about $16,000. Right. In today's market, who knows, $500,000, $600,000. It's, you know, a lot of land in White Marsh, Maryland. So I don't know exactly what the value, but I know it's more than 16,000. If she wanted to avoid that 4.5% tax to me, she could gift me the farm. The problem there is that if you can't tell by looking at me, I'm no farmer. I'm not going to go live on the orchard and put on a straw hat and take over the farm. So in all likelihood, I'd sell it. And when I do, if I sell it for 500, 600,000, I'll pay capital gains on the difference between 600,000 and the 16 that she paid for it. So we're looking at this range, 15 to 37% on the $484,000 in profit that I make on that property. Alternatively, I could pay the 4.5% inheritance tax by inheriting it from her at her death. I get a total step up in tax basis, meaning my basis is now 500, 600,000. When I sell it, it's a wash for capital gains purposes. I won't pay a dime in capital gains tax. So lawyers are notoriously bad at math, but luckily we're good enough to know that 4.5% is better than 15 to 37% on that difference there. Do I need a will or do I need a trust? So all trusts avoid probate and wills must be probated. There's a misconception that I don't have to go through probate because I've created a will. My parents created a will. They're confusing probate with intestate succession. Intestate succession is someone died without any documents. Probate is the court overseeing the distributions of a will. Wills and probate go hand in hand. Wills are typically insufficient for different life scenarios. So we say that wills are fine if you die perfectly, meaning that there's no fighting and that you are that typical American family, a husband and wife with 2 kids and a white picket fence, then maybe a will is sufficient for those things. But for blended families, they're not. What happens with a blended family is you have this new spouse who's not the parent of your children, and you're forced to choose. Do I leave my assets to my new spouse or do I leave my assets to my children? Too often we see where someone leaves the assets to the new spouse thinking, we love each other and we're all a big happy family and she'll leave the things to my kids when she's gone, and she doesn't. She leaves them to her kids or she leaves them to her family, anywhere else but to my kids. And as an attorney, I'm not in the business of wishful thinking or of trusting people to do the right thing. I'm in the business of putting things in black and white that can't be altered. And I know that exactly what I want to happen is going to happen. So with a will, I leave the house to my wife so that she can continue to live there. And she ultimately leaves it to someone other than my kids. And that value goes wherever it goes. With a trust, I can say, hey, look, this is for my wife to use until she passes. And at her passing, the house shall be liquidated and given to my 2 kids. Maybe with my retirement account, I say that my wife can receive 10% of that account every single year for X amount of years. I can set a dollar amount. She's allowed to have $20,000 from my checking account for every year for the rest of her life. But when she passes, it goes to my kids, rather than just leaving it to her and hoping that she does the right thing. So for blended families, I get very concerned for people that say, oh, I've got a will, everything is handled. And another thing that we see there with blended families, let's not just think that everybody is crooked and they're not going to do the right thing. What we see is that the person remarries. And maybe it's not their own kids they're leaving it to. Maybe it's the new spouse who's coming in and who's going to take those assets away. And even though at the time someone passes, their first thought is, I'm not going back out on the dating apps and getting remarried. But we actually see people marrying nursing home staff. They marry their caretaker. They marry someone who was transporting them to their dialysis appointments. And that person weasels their way into the inheritance that was meant for the decedent's kids. So there's a whole bunch of scenarios there where a will be insufficient and a trust could protect against those kind of scenarios. Here's a question that I love to ask the people in my presentations. How many people love their ex enough to leave them an inheritance? Not a lot. We don't get it a whole lot, right? And I'm usually thinking of the parent of your children. When you have a blended family, we're talking about that ex that was the parent of your biological children. In my scenario, if I just left everything 50-50 to my 2 kids in a will, it would go to them in what's called an UTMA account, Uniform Transfers to Minor account. The default guardian of that money is whoever is the guardian of my kids, which would be their biological mother. I don't know how other people feel, but I can tell you that I have no intention to leave a large inheritance to my kid's mother, to my ex. I want to make sure that that money is used for my kids specifically. So with a will, you could end up just dumping that money on your kids and having the ex become the manager of that money. One of my favorite clients sadly passed away about 2 weeks ago, but she pointed something out to me that I had not really thought of before. Her ex was a drug addict who had never met the kids. He lived in Tennessee, had no contact with them. If they would have inherited the life insurance and the proceeds of her home, that would have been a financial incentive for him to come back into their lives, 15 years into their life, coming back in, this drug addict who's never met them. The money that her kids would have inherited actually could have been harmful to them, could have actually put them in harm's way because it pays dad to come back into the picture. So what do we do for her? We set up a trust for them so that the money is managed by her best friend from high school. No financial incentive for dad to come back into the picture. Wills provide no asset protection. So a will just sits there as an inactive document until the day you pass away. It doesn't do anything to stop creditors from taking your money. It doesn't do anything to stop the nursing home from taking your home or from taking your assets. Certain trusts, we'll talk about a little bit in a bit, can actually protect against those things and make sure that there is money there at our passing. I don't want to totally rag on wills and say that there's never a circumstance under which a will could be sufficient. So for a person that doesn't have real estate, that can be a situation where you might use a will, because in Pennsylvania, it's very difficult to avoid probate for real estate without using a trust. We don't have transfers on death deeds here in Pennsylvania. So there's no way to designate a beneficiary on a deed. Down south, they call them ladybird deeds or TOD deeds, where you can build right into the deed a TOD at your passing. And minimal assets or no descendants. So for someone that just doesn't have hardly anything, or if I didn't have kids, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't care where my stuff goes when I pass. I am very particular about my estate plan because I have children. So for people that I've had clients come in here that have no kids and no living siblings, they really don't care where their assets go. So a minimal will that just says it goes to the ASPCA or it goes to a horse rescue or something would be sufficient for them. We're not as interested in protecting assets if it has nowhere to go. What a trust is basically a contract. A trust is a contract between the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. The grantor is the person creating the estate plan. So it's the person who's taking their assets and saying, these are my assets, these are where I want them to go. The trustee is the manager of those assets, the person that says, okay, it's time for this asset to go here and this asset to go here. And the beneficiary, which is my personal favorite, is the person who gets to receive the assets that are in the trust from the grantor. I'd much rather be a beneficiary of some rich uncle's trust than the creator of a trust, but reality is that I'm more likely to be a grantor. They can be irrevocable or revocable. And as you see there, an irrevocable trust can be used for asset protection, and it's perfect for real estate. A revocable trust is strictly probate avoidance, but it allows you to have ease of access. In a revocable trust, we can put our assets in, and at any time you can take it right back out and do with whatever you want with it. So you don't get any asset protection there. It's strictly a vehicle to avoid probate at the time of your passing. The irrevocable trust, on the other hand, the type that we use, you put the assets in and you basically promise never to give those assets back to yourself. And because you're not going to give those assets back to yourself, your creditors can't say, give it back to yourself and pay me. In some respects, it works like a donor-directed fund, where you've set the money aside with the intention of it going other places. And the only place that it can't go is back to you as an individual. That's how we get asset protection. The reason I said real estate is the perfect thing to put into an asset protection trust is because you still get all the benefits of homeownership. You can live in it, you can sell it, you can upsize, downsize, basically all the things that make having a home great. Typically, all of us are going to have a home in some shape or form from now until our death. So you're not giving up anything by placing it in the trust and saying at some point it will pass to my beneficiaries. By using that asset protection trust, if I take my home, if I take any financial assets and put it into that irrevocable trust, and it's in there for 5 years and a day, a nursing home can no longer say, hey, you have a home, we're going to put a lien against it for care. You have to liquidate it and pay for our care. it totally protects that asset after 5 years and a day. For any other creditors, someone who slips and falls on my property, or I get into a car accident, immediate protection. As soon as I put it in there, it's untouchable for them to attach to for creditors. Here's just a basic list that I created of what I call the don'ts, or things to avoid when it comes to estate planning. Do not add your child as a joint account holder on your financial accounts. There are a bunch of legal financial ramifications there. If a mother and father adds their child and one of the parents passes away, an inheritance tax is charged at that passing, because the assumption is that the child has inherited a portion of that person's. So let's say they each have a third, that person dies, the daughter has inherited half of the third. But in reality, it's still the other parent's money, and the child is just added for convenience. And then the really sad part is if the child passes away first, the parents could pay an inheritance tax on their own money that was never the child's money, because in theory, 1/3 of it was theirs. It also exposes that account to all three of their lives. So any type of lawsuit, divorce, anything that happens between all three of those people, they are now impacting that account. So you're exposing it to a wider range of life choices. Do not just add your child to a deed. So remember, I talked about the carryover basis versus a step up in basis. If you add your child to your deed midway through home ownership, that portion that they own now gets a carryover basis. And it gets really complicated, because if they're inheriting half, half gets a stepped up basis and half gets a carryover basis, the half that was gifted to them. Again, same thing with financial accounts. It exposes that home to that person's life. It's now an asset for them for attachment for Medicaid resources. Do not gift your child your home. Again, the carryover basis versus the step-up basis. And there's other issues there. So if grandma gifted me the farm, we've already said from a financial aspect, it's a bad idea. But if grandma's still living, whose farm is it? It's Jay's farm. It's subject to my life choices. It's subject to my divorce, my creditors, and I don't have to let grandma live there anymore. That makes me sound like a really bad person. I would never evict my grandma, but let's say that the conversation turns to, is it time for grandma to go to a nursing home, or is it not? Maybe the care is starting to get excessive. I think if I own the farm, I have the upper hand. If she maintains the farm, she has the upper hand. And if I'm in her shoes, I want to maintain that upper hand conversation. Don't delay getting documents in place. It's really hard for me when someone has to do a power of attorney and their capacity is very questionable. The family is all sitting around the table looking at me to give the thumbs up. Yes, this person has capacity, or no, they don't. And a lot of times there's tears involved, because they remember the parent who was sharp-witted and who taught them everything they know. And that person doesn't recognize everyone in the room anymore. And we're trying to get this power of attorney desperately signed. And to say that they have capacity. And the reality is, if we can't get that power of attorney done, then the next step is a guardianship in the courts. So then the weight is kind of on my shoulders, because I know that I'm sending them to a much more difficult process if I say this person doesn't have capacity. We tend to kind of put off estate planning because death is not a fun subject. But then incapacity comes up on us sooner than we thought. And it's really sad when we have clients that I tell them that we need to have the assets in the trust for 5 years, and they have to really look at themselves and say, do I have 5 comfortable years ahead of me? Do I have 5 years ahead of me, period? I would say, a lot of people think our ideal client is 65 and over. I think 50 would be a much better number, a safer number to say I have 5 healthy years ahead of me. Do not pay for skilled nursing care or apply for Medicaid without talking to an attorney. If you apply for Medicaid, you get what's called a snapshot. It's a photograph of all of your assets as of that moment. If you do that, you've taken it out of my hands to be able to maybe delay it a month because it would be financially beneficial to you, or to move some assets around before we get that kind of locked in place. And we can protect assets even for someone who's already been in a nursing home and paying privately for a while. So there's never a point where it's too late unless all of the assets are gone. If someone gets admitted to a nursing home, contact our office, contact someone who specializes in Medicaid, because they can save you money no matter how much or how little your family may have. Here's some common issues. How do I stay in my home longer rather than going into a facility? What if I don't think I can stay healthy for 5 or more years? How do I pay for assisted living or memory care as opposed to skilled care? Or I'd like to learn more about estate planning. Well, that's the reason why that we've invited these guest speakers, because they can answer some of these questions. And if you'd like to learn more, then we recommend signing up for one of our other workshops that dives a little deeper in depth. Peter, I'm going to turn it over to you. He's going to tell you about his services and how it coordinates with ours.
Metzbower. Great job, Jay. Good
Yeah, that was
information.
Right, so how do we do this again? How do I get this on the screen? The
USB, okay, you got the USB,
Yep,
so just,
change them out, I think.
yeah, your display settings.
Gotcha. Jake's my HV tech guy. Okay, I said HVAC. He's my
I have many talents.
he's my what are you going? Audio visual. He's my AV guy. Those are the there you go. Get that. Oh, heartbeat.
There we go.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, okay, cool, awesome. So I want to take a moment to thank Attorney Metzbower for the opportunity to be here today and just really all the information that you know he's put together for his presentation. This is my second time here, and I was still taking a lot of notes, so that was awesome. And thanks for thinking of this. It's Jay's idea. We were talking about it some time ago, and we just wanted to try and help educate the community. And I mean, I've gotten a lot out of it. So also want to thank Attorney Palomo for the use of the office. Also Pam Witwer, who's joining us today, and Lisa Naples, who's joining us today. We'll be hearing from them just too. So tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Peter Franzis. I'm in a company called Franzis Insurance Services Group. So I do insurance. So we're talking a little bit about that, but we're going to talk mostly about the parameters of long-term care. What's it look like? Where do you get it? What's all that stuff? Because we talk about long-term care, but sometimes we don't define things. So a little bit about me on the left-hand side. My parents are Greek immigrants, both of them, so that makes me 100% Greek. I was born and raised in York. I graduated with honors from Dover High School. I attended Bentley University in Waltham, Massachusetts. I was in the Marine Corps Reserve for 8 years. Lived in Boston, Massachusetts area after college. Moved back in 2006 to support my parents. Best decision I ever made. Got a chance to spend some time with my dad before he passed. A little bit about how I got started in the insurance business. I got started in 2013 to help my mom. She had some questions, and the gentleman who helped her with her first policy was not very nice when I called him to ask questions, so thought I'd help her out. Today I have over actually close to 1,200 clients since 2013, which is pretty nice. And I do all of that stuff. So I do health, dental, vision insurance, life insurance, disability, accident, cancer, critical illness. So I work with a lot of small businesses, a lot of individuals that are self-employed. So I do individual, group, short-term, and yes, believe it or not, travel insurance. Busy time of year right now for that. Folks with medical conditions traveling, they want to make sure that they're extending their ability to get reimbursed for travels, either domestically or internationally. I've got a lot of clients that are on Medicare, and they just want to make sure that if they have any out-of-pocket expenses, they get reimbursed. Services. So I partner with a lot of owners, human resource managers to set up benefit plans for small businesses, insurance, as well as voluntary benefits. I help people pre-plan retirement. In other words, I'm 58, 59, 60, 61. I've worked for the state. I'm leaving. What are my health insurance options? Or I want to know what my options are before Medicare or after. Help folks complete and submit applications, shop for plans, compare options, and then beyond enrollment, someone loses a card, someone has a question about a prescription, someone has a question about changing doctors, they reach out to me rather than the insurance company. These are just some of the insurance companies that I represent. I have about 200 in total, and organizations. So like I work for Penny, I work for Get Covered New Jersey, I work for, the exchange through the state of Maryland as well. Dozens of Medicare companies, life insurance, health insurance, some familiar names and some you might not have seen before. Whenever someone comes to me, it's a very detailed process. I make sure I find out who their doctors are, prescriptions, what are they planning on doing with the plan, the health insurance plan or the life insurance or whatever it is we're talking about. Because I want to make sure that whatever it is they're gonna get, it's gonna fit that circumstance. I do annual plan reviews with everyone, especially my Medicare clients, because medications change, so sometimes circumstances change. So sometimes we need to make changes, once a year, et cetera. Follow up after enrollment to make sure they've got everything, they understand everything. And again, those annual plan reviews. So one thing I want to talk about is this. What I'm going to cover and the information we're going to talk about today, it's for your information. It can change in minutes. A lot of the information we're going to talk about is industry-wide stuff. It's insurance terminology. That insurance professionals use to reference the healthcare industry. So some of this stuff won't make sense. I do suggest that everyone do their own research. And also, there's no way that in the 20 minutes I'm going to have, I can cover everything in the detail and in the context it deserves. We're going to be talking about a lot of general concepts and stuff like that. So first thing, we're going to talk about associated terms. Again, this is specific to long-term care. So what is long-term care? It's a wide range of assisted services provided to an individual based on their needs. And it may range from assistance around the home, care provided in a nursing facility. So it could be as little as what I do for my mom. I pick up her groceries, drive her to doctor's appointments, or it could be someone in a memory care facility that needs 24 supervision, security, security, that sort of stuff. So what is short-term care? A lot of folks don't realize there's another option called short-term care. Short-term care in the insurance world refers to recuperative care or respite care for up to a year. So if you hear about a long-term care insurance policy, that's something that's designed to be longer than a year, or if you hear about a short-term care insurance policy, that's designed to be up to a year. Activities of daily living. So routine tasks that healthy people can do without help. And they're pretty specific. When you're talking about instrumental activities of daily living, that can be kind of a broad range of things. The activities of daily living are very specific because activities of daily living are what trigger the ability to access a life insurance policy if it has an add-on for something like this, a long-term care policy, or for someone to need the services of someone at a higher level, trained level in a facility. So what are they? Eating, toileting, transferring, which is just, moving, mobility, bathing, dressing, and continence. So those are the 6, and they're pretty standard. Instrumental activities of daily living. These are a little bit more subject to personal opinion, but typically most people would agree they're shopping, cooking, housekeeping, laundry, medication management. Obviously, these will typically start before these do. So Medicare. What is Medicare? It's federal health insurance. It is federal health insurance for people 65 or older, and some people under 65. A lot of clients that are under 65 and they're on Medicare. You don't have to be 65 or over to be on it. With certain disabilities or conditions that cover medically necessary care, such as doctor visits and hospital stays. What is Medicaid? Completely separate program. It's a joint federal and state government program that helps people with low income and assets pay for some or all of their health care bills. We're going to talk about it in a little bit. Most folks don't know the different types of Medicaid, how to get approved for it. Folks at Paloma Associates understand it completely. I've seen them do things with my clients that I've never seen before. It's just truly remarkable. What is the Medicaid partnership? The Medicaid partnership is a collaboration between private long-term care insurance companies like you might have heard of Genworth, or companies like Mutual of Omaha, Lincoln Financial, that offer these products. So what is it? It's a partnership between them that encourages people to buy the long-term care insurance, and that way the income that they're receiving from those policies does not get counted towards their Medicaid determination. We're going to talk about the reason for that. Familial laws. Sometimes folks have heard of it, sometimes they haven't, or parental support laws. These are legal rules that require adult children or other relatives to support their impoverished or infirm family members. Pennsylvania is one of the only states where familial law was actually enforced, where someone had their mom or dad in a nursing home, they passed, the nursing home went after them to cover the expenses that they owed. There's a lot of detail to it. It was some time ago. But again, sometimes folks ask, so I'd like to make sure that's something that's included. Chronic, critical, terminal illness, you're gonna hear about these as far as what are they? Again, these are triggers that will allow someone to get a policy, depending on what the type of policy is, and then qualify for whatever the circumstances are. For riders, when you add something onto a life insurance policy, accelerated death benefit just means that the person is alive. They can accelerate the death benefit. So I'm alive and I have a chronic illness, I have a critical illness, I have a terminal illness, and I need to get some of the money from the policy, some of the death benefit, to use while I'm alive. A lot of insurance companies will have those on at no cost. And I also mentioned the Pension Protection Act, which was passed back in 2006. This is something that will allow folks that have an annuity to use money from the annuity, again, similar to what long-term care insurance policies will do. If they're part of the partnership program, you can use money from an annuity and it will not affect the tax basis. So, all right, let's talk about some statistics. This is pretty crazy if you think about it. And it's pretty cool too. The population segment growing at the fastest rate is comprised of individuals age 85 or older. Talk about people that are living longer. Someone turning 65 today has a 70% chance of needing some type of long-term care. Whenever you hear long-term care statistics, you hear typically 70% will need it. That's a national number. Some folks won't, some folks will, but again, 70%. On average, women need long-term care for 3.7 years and men for 2 years. So when we're talking about long-term care, the actual receiving the benefits, we're talking about the inability to perform 2 of those 6 functions of daily living. So most people, when they read that, on average, women need long-term care for 3.7 years. They don't understand what that means. What that means is you've started the decline. You've checked 2 of those 6 boxes, and you will be checking the rest as you go through the process. So women typically live longer than men, 3.7 for women, and then 2.2 for men. So whenever someone's coming to me talking about long-term care planning, of course, I refer them to the team at Paloma Associates, but I also make sure that we have an understanding of these numbers. It's certainly possible to live longer than this. You know, there's a lot of statistics of people in like dementia or Alzheimer's that are in facilities for 6, 7, 8, 10 years. But again, these are just national averages. 20% of today's 65-year-olds will need long-term care for longer than 5 years. So there you go. You got 20% there. 8% of people between the ages of 40 and 50 have a disability that could require long-term care services in the future. 69% of people aged 90 or older have a disability. 80% of care at home is provided by unpaid caregivers. And then this is an interesting study too. One of the things you'll find is, if you start researching this, a lot of the studies were done back in 2015, 2017, 18, 19, and then everything stopped for obvious reasons, right? We had COVID happening. You weren't going to have researchers walking in and out of long-term care facilities, compiling data. So a lot of this really hasn't started yet. The data since then, according to a 2015 study by AARP and the National Alliance on Caregiving, 43.5 million in the US had been an unpaid caregiver in the last 12 months. Who were they usually? The wife. Why? Again, men tend to start down this path faster, which is why they don't live as long, 2.2 years. And then 14% of them were themselves age 65 or more. On average, over 50% of personal caregivers develop chronic conditions. Why? Because they're usually 65 or older or in that bracket, and they're giving care typically to a spouse. And that could be moving them. That could be doing all sorts of stuff. So levels of care. This is the thing that triggers a lot of this. And a lot of folks don't understand this. So there's 3 in the insurance world, referring to the healthcare side of things. There's 3 levels of care. Intermediate care is typically lumped into skilled care. So what's skilled care? Skilled care is designed for people that are going to get rehabilitated. They're going back home. That's the goal, is to go home or to go to another facility. skilled care. Intermediate care is the same thing, you just don't need the same level of care. Someone's not watching you 24/7, maybe just changing a bandage, whatever. Custodial care. This is the one where it's not designed for you to go anywhere. You're staying where you are, or you're getting transferred to another facility where you'll be there for the rest of your life. This is what most people think of when they think of going into a nursing home, etc. This is the one that most insurance will not cover. This is the one that Medicaid, depending on what Medicaid will cover. That's where the team of Glowing Associates. Okay, where to receive care. There's a lot of different types. These are just 4 basic categories. Nursing home. Nursing home is a facility that provides long-term care services 24 hours a day. Alternative care facilities, they're a step down. They're a facility where people don't need all the services. Community-based professional care. That could be stuff in the house, or it could be something like a, like an assisted living facility, a senior community where you have an apartment or a condo or a townhouse within an organization, within a group of other folks. And again, it could be in-home stuff. So respiratory, speech, occupational, physical therapy in the home. And then you actually add in-home care. So 4 levels, nursing home is the highest. Let's look at some costs. So we're in 17601, that's our zip code. And you can check these numbers on a regular basis. You can go to ltc.gov, which is just longtermcare.gov. It's a good website. It's a little bit of a goofy website. Looks like it hasn't been updated in about 20 years, but it's still there. It will typically route you to the Genworth website. Genworth was considered to be the pinnacle for long-term care insurance for a very long time. Still a great company, but when a lot of these policies were created, when they were popular back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, people didn't realize how long people were going to live. In the insurance world, you want to, be collecting premiums and not necessarily having to pay out claims. So prices started going up pretty fast. Companies like Genworth started losing their ratings pretty quickly because they were increasing, their price pretty fast. A lot of companies are gone today. There were probably maybe 100 companies that offered some type of a long-term care insurance product when they first came out, and there's 8 or 9 today. So pretty small space. So you've got home health care at the top, community assisted living in the middle. So again, sort of an intermediate level of care, and then nursing home, highest level of care. So for this zip code, if you're looking for somebody that has the formal training at that level, you're typically looking at about $31 an hour. If it's just, regular routine stuff, not a specific level of training, you're looking at around $21 an hour. And then you can look at the daily rate, monthly, annual. So if you're looking for someone that will help you in your house, and again, depending on the level of care you might need or training you may have, you could be looking at around $70,000. That's now, that's 2023, obviously 2024 hasn't happened. That's a lot of money. That's more than most people make in a year. That's home health care. And if you don't need somebody at that level of training or skilled, then you're looking at closer to 48,000. If you're talking about going into some type of a facility, now facilities don't typically have, you can do, some daily rates, but it depends on, again, the level of care you're getting. On the lower level, they really don't have it. That's where home care will help out. But if you're looking for a facility and there is at that very least minimum level of care, then yeah, you can do daily rates because some folks aren't in for very long. So that's $202 a day on average. Monthly, $6,100. Annually, $73,000. So again, that $6,100, that's not including a high level of memory care. That's not including a lot of security. That's typically somebody that's in an apartment or in a condo, in a community, and they want that sort of, community interaction, social interaction, things like that. Now, when you start getting into the higher level of care, this is where you're talking again, nursing home. So semi-private room for 30, not a big difference between semi-private and private. For the daily rate, not a big difference again for monthly, $15,000 a month, pretty crazy, right? Annual rate, 180, that's private room, semi-private, 156. It's a lot of money if you're going to a facility like that. It is crazy. But the nice thing is we're in the right place because these folks can help you, A, protect that, and B, reduce that. Whoop, hit the wrong button. Oh, there we go. That was good. Click it again, I'm back up. So let's talk about how to pay for all that stuff, right? There are a ton of options. The first thing you want to do is you want to consult, an attorney like Attorney Metzbower, Attorney Pugh in the room, Attorney Belomo, all great folks know what they're doing. So personal funds is a very common way to subsidize or possibly pay for that long-term care. Because keep in mind, again, women 3.7 years, men 2.2. How are you going to pay for it? A lot of folks have set up money aside. They've been saving for it. Sometimes you run into issues though. If it's a couple, you're typically the husband's going to need it first. What's the concern? Concern is the husband's going to go through that money and there won't be anything left for the wife. That's where sometimes you'll start to see some private financing or some other stuff come in. But personal funds, a lot of folks are paying for it through their Social Security, pension IRA, interest income, cash savings, stocks, bonds, sale of real estate. This can be something that is a plus or a negative. If you're selling the house, which I'm sure Lisa will talk about as well, selling the house, it can be a great source of cash, but the problem is where are you going, right? Because that's another concern. That's where sometimes private financing will come in. I've had clients where some sort of a cash out refinance, a reverse mortgage, home equity line of credit made more sense than selling, but in some cases, selling the house, if you're alone, moving in with a relative or moving into a facility, this could be a great thing as well. Believe it or not, there are some nonprofit facilities that will take you as well. Not a lot, for obvious reasons, because they're nonprofit. And those waiting lines are extremely long when you can find one. But these are folks that will, in some cases, allow folks to stay behind if they run out of money. That's called uncompensated care. Yeah, that's why they're nonprofits. These are typically religious facilities, but again, not a lot. Private financing, a lot of different ways to do it. This is where the long-term care insurance policies come in. Again, home equity, like I mentioned before. Someone can take out a life insurance policy and add something to it called a rider. A lot of times they're there for free. There's no additional cost. But those riders will allow folks to do certain things like access to death benefit, like I mentioned before. Some will accumulate cash value. You can also use an annuity for stuff like that. There's also something called a viatical settlement and a life settlement. These are obviously last resorts. Viatical settlement is someone that's selling their life insurance policy and the person's terminally ill. Life settlement is the exact same as viatical, but life settlement just means they're not terminally ill. If someone has a life insurance policy, like, hey, I want to sell it, there's a lot of businesses, a lot of companies out there that will buy them because most folks don't know any better. They don't know there could be a way to, turn the policy back into the insurance company, get money out of it, cash out, sort of. There's just a lot of options. Sometimes folks are taking advantage of other people with these options. So private Medicare insurance plans, Medicare Advantage plans, Medicare supplement plans. A lot of people think that when you go on to long-term care, that Medicare will take care of it. So let's talk about that. As we mentioned before, there's 3 types of care, right? So Medicare will cover skilled and intermediate. Skilled, going into a facility, this is that 100-day rule you might have heard about, or the 20-day rule, right? So for the first 20 days, Medicare will cover you. After that, depending on the type of plan you have a copay. Now, what triggers all of this is, what does the doctor say? If the doctor says you're making progress, okay, then this will apply. The doctor says you're not making progress, this does not apply. Now you're going to have to find somewhere to put mom, dad, whomever we're talking about, and that's where those nursing homes come in. So Medicare will take care of it for the first 20 days. It's a Medicare Advantage plan, first 20 days. After that, there's a copay, and on average, it's around $203 for days 21 and 100, which a lot of folks can't even pay for. It's a lot of money for some of these. Medicare supplement, same thing, because they have the exact same contract with Medicare. They're not going to cover custodial care. So they're not going to cover that Alzheimer's care, that dementia care. They're not going to cover facilities like that. They will cover, again, skilled and intermediate care. Now, Medicare pays, same things before, first 20 days. After that, it's going to depend on the Medicare supplement. Some Medicare supplements will cover 100% of the rest of the 80 days. Some will not, some will be a copay. So, a lot of folks ask, hey, can I get a long-term care policy? Can I get a short-term care policy? Can I buy a life insurance policy? What does it look like? What do those costs look like? What are those benefits? So, these are just some examples, and I tried to be as specific as I could about the parameters for it. So to Jay's point from earlier, most people in their 50s are kind of starting this process. So the typical person that reaches out to me that's interested in this is 50, 55. So what I did was I just kind of created some general profiles, ran some rates with some companies. So if someone was interested in a long-term care policy and they were 55, female, standard height, standard weight, no tobacco, risk class is standard, which means they're average. The company has the Medicaid partnership. So again, that's where if you do wind up going on Medicaid, the income you start receiving from the policy will not affect your Medicaid determination. Could they use it at an assisted living facility? Could they use it for home health care? These are all things to add on to the policy. Return of premium is very important. A lot of folks say, hey, listen, long-term care policy is a use it or lose it. That means you either go into a facility and you start drawing income, or you pass away, you haven't used it. That's not actually the case. A lot of companies will allow you to add a return of premium to it, which means when you die, your beneficiary gets everything you've paid in. And typically, a lot of companies will give you some interest on it as well. What's the cost for that? So for $6,000 a month, which sounds like a lot, but again, keep in mind, it won't cover some things, and those are the 2023 numbers. This could be 10, 15, 20 years from now. So for $347.99 a month, price will never go up for these companies that I ran the rates on. Annually, you're looking at that. You'd have a $6,000 per month benefit. Now, is $6,000 going to be enough? A lot of folks will get something like this and will use their income to supplement it. This isn't the only source. So what a lot of folks will do is they'll use whatever they have, they'll wait, and then 6 months, a year down the road, once that money's coming down, then they'll, use something like this. There's also short-term care policies because some folks have a rapid decline, but again, they still need money for things. So short-term care policy, again, is designed to take care of expenses for the first year, first 12 months. Same profile, female, age 55, female. I use female for these two, because females are expected to live longer. The costs for females are higher. For life insurance, males are not expected to live longer, obviously. And so they're going to pay a claim faster or sooner. So the cost is higher for a male. So try to use it average person, worst case scenario. Short-term care policy, these can get pretty specific. There's dozens of different options. I use this as if someone was going to be needing 4 hours a day in a facility, $1,200 a week at home. So this is $108.60 a month premium. Again, it will never go up. But again, this is just for a year. This is designed to give somebody that benefit for 36 months. So completely different, but again, can be used together. Someone could take out a life insurance policy. Life insurance is a lot more expensive. Why? Because you're talking about much larger numbers, and if you're using it for a different purpose. Same example, male, monthly $905. Why? At 55 for $350,000. And this is a whole life policy, which means it would cover you for your whole life. You get a term policy, which would cover you for a lot less time. Might defeat the purpose of having something like this for that purpose. But again, it is still an option in some folks. So let's talk about Medicaid. Number one way people pay for long-term care. Number one, 60%. What does that mean? That means the state is trying to figure out ways to get people off of Medicaid from paying for long-term care. That's the reason why that long-term care partnership exists with the insurance company. They want to incentivize people so that they can get off of Medicaid. So there's 4 different levels of Medicaid from the state of Pennsylvania. There's institutional, nursing home Medicaid, highest level. That's the highest level. Publishers Clearinghouse Prize, remember that back in the day? That's it. So when somebody shows up at your door with a big check, anyone under the age of 50 probably doesn't know what I'm talking about. But they show up at your door with balloons and a big check like, hey, you won? That's it. Institutional Medicaid. That's what these folks do. That's what the team at Paloma Associates can help you get. I've never seen anybody get it without the help of someone who knows what they're doing. Institutional Medicaid is the only one that will cover skilled, intermediate, and custodial, all 3 in a facility. There are some things that are not covered, like a private room's not covered, certain special foods aren't covered, with the exception of like things that could cause problems like allergies, food allergies. Institutional is the highest. Second highest are home and community-based services. It's also known as the waivers program. It will cover skilled, intermediate, and custodial, but it's not going to pay for room and board like mortgage payments, rent, things like that. So there's a little bit of a catch there. It's just the next level down. The next level down, which is probably one of the most common, is A, B, and D, aged, blind, and disabled. When you think of somebody on Medicaid, this is typically what it is. They qualify based on their age, some sort of a medical condition. And then just regular Medicaid is typically folks that were born with some sort of an illness or disability. They're not older and 20s, 30s, 40s, et cetera, on Medicaid. Another way to fund this is there's a state-funded long-term care program in the state of Washington. A lot of states, including Pennsylvania, are thinking about imposing it. It's actually come up in state legislature twice. So House Bill 2779, also House Bill 844. It's never been passed, but it certainly could be because they are trying to push it through. What's it going to look like? It'll be an uncapped payroll tax for W-2 employees, uncapped. So it'll be 58 cents per $100 of earnings. Folks that are self-employed, and a lot of us in the room probably are, can opt in. And there's just a lot of moving parts to it. There's another program too that doesn't actually give somebody money for things, but it is a program that folks can access. It's a state-funded program. You can get it through the PA Housing Finance Agency, or PHFA. It's just a home modification loan. Helps people put in ramps, handrails, things like that. So if someone is going to stay home, age in place, it's a safer environment. Medicare. Medicare is only going to cover the first 20 days that we talked about. After that, you've got a copay for the remaining 80 days to get to 100. And again, that's only if it's skilled and intermediate. Depends on what the doctor says. If you're not showing signs of recuperating, if you're not in a rehabilitated state, they're not going to cover the 100 days. It's not like a guaranteed 100 days. VA healthcare. So Medicaid, institutional Medicaid, and VA healthcare, full VA healthcare. There's several different levels. As a veteran, I work with a lot of vets that don't qualify. Some do, but you need full VA healthcare to qualify. VA healthcare is the next and only other one compared to institutional Medicaid that will actually cover skilled, intermediate, custodial. And then just some resources. So for those of you that are in Lancaster County, here's a bunch for Lancaster. York has kind of the same, corresponding stuff. So there's long-term care.gov, like I mentioned. There's the elder care locator. Lancaster County Veterans Affairs, great group of folks over there. Or you could also call the national number, the Department of Veterans Affairs. Lancaster County Office on Aging is great too. And then a whole bunch of other stuff. So awesome. I am done. Who's up next?
That's a lot of info.
It is. Yep. I didn't have a lot of time. Yeah. Yeah. So good. I'm glad somebody
Good
was
stuff.
overwhelmed. Good.
Very well.
Yeah. All right. Lisa's up next. You got it. Yeah.
Great job, Peter.
Thank you.
Lisa, can I use your when you're at worst?
Yeah. Good afternoon. I am Lisa Naples. I am a residential realtor with Berkshire Hathaway. I work in Lancaster County. I'm in my finishing up my 22nd year as a realtor. August is my anniversary month. And one thing that I particularly enjoy about residential real estate is the process of downsizing and helping people make a smooth downsize. So I created a workbook called Sorted and Packed, and it's 10 steps to get started in downsizing. So it's to make something that's fairly complex, to break it down into some simple steps to find a way to get started. There's not one way to do it, but hopefully it helps people find a starting point. And it ties it back to me as a realtor or your realtor and how we can partner in the downsizing process. All right, so I like this quote by Walt Disney. We keep moving forward, opening new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. So this ties to downsizing because in order to get motivated to go through all of the trouble, and it is a lot of trouble, you have to be excited about where you're going. So you have to find a place that is going to suit your lifestyle and that makes it easier to part with a house that you've loved for many years. And my 10 steps really fall into these 4 questions. What are you going to do with your stuff? What are you going to do with your home? Where are you going? And what is your timing? People downsize for a lot of different reasons. This is not an exhaustive list, and people downsize at different ages as well. It's not just a senior activity, but it often is. So there's lifestyle reasons, there's financial reasons. Maybe you're tired of maintaining your home and you want to move into a condo where you don't have to do anything outside, or maybe your health has changed and you need something more accessible. So lots of reasons to choose to downsize. And then proactive versus reactive. By coming to a seminar like this, that is proactive. Proactive means you can take your time, you can do it on your own terms, and you make all of the decisions. When you're reactive, often you're reacting to some incident in your life or a health crisis, and suddenly you're no longer in control, you're not able to make your own choices, you're not able to do things on your own timeline. So it's a lot less stressful, and you get where you want to go if you're proactive and you don't wait. So again, my workbook ties everything back to partnering with a realtor. So step 1, schedule an appointment with a realtor to talk about your plans. I think it's great to meet with someone a year before they're planning to make a move, 18 months, maybe even 2 years. So we can get ahead of things, and I can help them with a couple of important things during that first meeting. But I can also be contacted when the house is empty and they've already moved. That happens too. But by planning ahead, my focus is let's get the most equity we can out of your home, and let's make it as smooth as possible. If I jump in right at the last minute, you might have lost some opportunity to get more equity out of your home, but I can still help. So one thing that we're going to do in that first meeting is determining maintenance and repairs. So if you own a home, you probably have a list of things that you think need to be done on your home. There's things need to be done. There's things you think might need to be done. I approach maintenance and repairs as every dollar you spend to get your house ready to sell needs to get a return. So we're not spending money not to make money. Everything we're not renovating your kitchen or bathroom just to sell your house, because you probably won't make that money back. But if you had a leak in your bathroom 3 years ago, fixed it, but never corrected the stain on the ceiling, that is something to address. We want to remove obstacles that buyers are going to have, and all they see are dollar signs when they look around and see deferred maintenance. So that's really what we're looking for, and that's what we'll do in that first meeting. We'll look at your list, and then I'll bring my observations to it and make some suggestions. Step 3, and these don't have to be in any particular order, but it's essential that you determine where you want to go. So a lot of what I will refer to is moving to a senior community. Lancaster has 50, 60 senior communities that offer different housing options. Many offer a continuum of care, but sometimes you're going to move out of the area when you downsize, or you just want to go from a 2-story house to a 1-story house, or a single family to a condo. So when you're being proactive, it's a good opportunity to really explore your options, to go to the senior communities, take tours. When you make a decision like that, it just has to feel right. It's a home. So it's just like house hunting. It's just like shopping for a college. You kind of know it when you feel it. So take your time to explore. Some destination tips. There are some things about relocating, downsizing and finding a new place that I can help you with, and others that are out of my hands. So if you're looking for a senior community, that's all handled in-house. You're not buying real estate at that point. But if you want to, of course, buy a condo or over 55 community like Traditions, that's real estate, and I can help with that. Get your finances in order. So this is the second thing that we will do when we have that initial meeting, is establish a price for your house. So when we meet and I see what you have, I can compare it to other homes that have sold, and I can give you a price if we were to list your house today, what that would be. And it's really a baseline because you might not move for 2 years, and 2 years from now, I will reevaluate. And if the market continues the way it is, your house will be worth more in 2 years than it is today. But that knowing how much you're gonna sell your house for is gonna help you when you're trying to qualify for a senior community. It's gonna help you if you want to buy a condo. You need to know how much money you're gonna work with. Step 5, what to do with your stuff. So this is the biggest obstacle. This is the reason why people delay downsizing, because they don't want to deal with the basement that's full of stuff, or the garage that's full of stuff, or the entire house that's full of stuff. And your kids don't want it, and your niece and nephew don't want it. Nobody wants your stuff. And you like your stuff, and it's really hard to get started and where to start. And more and more of my clients are enlisting the help of professionals, whether it's a professional organizer, a move management company. One suggestion I have is to hire them to come to your house once a week for 3 hours for a month. And you will learn a lot from a professional who does this every day that you can bring back and do more of the work yourself. So figuring out what to do with your stuff, and it is a great starting point to getting ready for your move. And then some tips about your stuff. You probably have great things. You spend a lot of money on them, but there is a surplus of household goods. So when you're figuring out where you're gonna go with things, it's better to have a pretty low expectation on how much money you're gonna get for things that you're not taking with you. The emphasis is more on getting rid of them than selling them. But if you have a collection of something or something of value, this is where being proactive comes as an advantage again, because if you have something that's a specialty item, you need time to find the buyer for that to get the best price. It's good to do that ahead of time. Step 6, tune up your moving timeline. So we aren't going to actually set a date or list your house until we know exactly when you're going to be moving into the next house. So until that time, we're just continuing with our plans, continuing to sort and get rid of your things. But if you're on a wait list, many senior communities will put you on a wait list, especially if you want something really specific that they have. You might have to wait 2 years for it to become available. You can check in with your community, to see where you are. Are you next, or are you 2 or 3 people back? Schedule your maintenance and repairs. So someday you're going to get the call that there's a unit available that you need to come take a look at, and contractors schedule in advance. You don't want to wait until you have a moving date to schedule the work on your house. If you have some bigger projects, you're going to want to get a couple of quotes for it. So something to continue to work on. And then step 8, I just can't emphasize enough that your stuff haunts you the entire process. You're just continuously sorting, donating, tossing, and it's never too late to enlist the help of a professional organizer. But just like everyone else, they need to be scheduled ahead of time. So if you think you're going to need some help in those last couple of months, it should be scheduled as soon as possible. Revisit your destination. So if you're going to a senior community, you're gonna get a phone call that there's a unit available. Come take a look at it so you can confirm. You go look at it, you say, yes, this is the one I want, and now you're gonna be moving forward. In the past couple of years, the timeline from that date to actually moving in is usually about 4 months. It can be 3 to 4 months. So you're not even listing your house right away, but you're much closer. So you have to be flexible. There's delays. So again, my goal with your move is that you move one time, you're not moving twice. So we aren't going to start a selling process until we feel very comfortable about the day that you can move in. And most senior communities have some flexibility so that you can, you get your house under contract, take occupancy of your new place, move all of your things in, and then close on your house the next week. Even for young people, selling a house and buying a new house on the same day is pretty terrible, even when everything goes smooth. So it's very nice to be able to move into your new place, then close on your old place, not all in one day, over a couple of weeks. All right, so step 10, finally, we are 60 days away from your move-in date. That's today's market. 2 years from now, the market conditions might change, and my recommendation on when to list your house might change. But for today, I say 2 months before you're moving in is a great time to list your house for sale. That's when staging begins, professional photography. That's a conversation for another day. But a lot of marketing goes into presenting your house, which is why you put all that effort into maintenance and repairs. And finally, you move in, put your feet up, and enjoy it. So my conclusion is downsizing is emotionally challenging because you're parting with things that you love and a place that you love. So you need to be pretty excited about where you're going. Sorting, donating, discarding can be exhausting, and it really is. So getting started with that as soon as possible is great, and hiring professionals is very helpful. But thorough planning ensures a smoother move, and it also helps you maximize that equity in your house. And I offer support and resources throughout the downsizing journey and can be leaned on for support from the beginning to the end. And then this is my contact information, and that is everything.
Awesome.
Great job, Lisa.
Buddy, I'm Pam Witwer. I'm the owner operator of Lancaster PA Notary and Lancaster PA Executor Services. It's a little bit about me. So I'm almost a 30-year resident of Lancaster. I was born in Pine Grove in Schuylkill County, very small town. Lived in Harrisburg for about 10 years as I started my career with the state. Moved to Lancaster when I met my first husband. I'm now divorced from that husband and married to my second husband. We're a blended family. I have a stepson from my husband's first marriage, and I'm a 22-year-old starting his senior year of college in a couple of weeks. I had a 30-year career with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in a variety of roles. I retired in 2016, and March of last year, so a year and a half ago, I started my notary business. I was never a notary in a previous life. It's just kind of led us to this. My husband saw a video on YouTube about notary signing agents who do real estate closings, and I was intrigued. So I did all my research and I decided, yeah, this is something that I want to do. So that's how Lancaster PA Notary was born. So I am a senior focused notary. And what exactly does that entail other than just calling myself a senior focused notary? Well, I provide services to the demographic of residents of the counties that I cover who are elderly, who are sometimes housebound or bedbound, They have mobility challenges. They're medically fragile, meaning maybe they use oxygen or some other kind of device or something, and it just makes getting out of the house or the facility difficult. So that's where I come in. So how I serve that community is that I make myself available to facilities such as hospitals, nursing homes, rehab facilities, hospice residences. I offer 24/7 on-call services in cases of medical crises where someone is going in for a surgery, prognosis isn't a good one, they don't have any estate planning in place at all, anything. So they want the bare minimum. They might want a healthcare power of attorney. They might want a financial power of attorney and a will. So those are the things I see when I go into an urgent setting like that. I'm on an on-call list with Lancaster General, a couple of the larger long-term care facilities and nursing homes in the area. So when they have a need, I'm one of the people that they call. I'm also a certified notary trust delivery agent. And what that means is I took a training course. I had to take a test to receive my certification. But if Palomo has a client who has signed up with them for estate planning and their trust binder is all ready to go, but they're in one of those categories where they're infirm, they're bedbound, it's a real difficulty for them to get out to the office to sign everything, I can actually go out as if I was an attorney and I can present the documents, give a general explanation of them, collect signatures, dates, confirm information, notarize everything, and then just leave the binder with the client or whatever happens to it after they sign it. So that's actually how I got connected with Palomo when I got this certification. I'm also a certified notary signing agent, as I mentioned, is a notary who goes out and does real estate loan closings or settlements. Not always a loan, sometimes it's a seller and not a buyer. So I provide a full range of real estate signing services. Full closing, which is buyer seller, buyer only, seller only, refinances and HELOCs. I also do general notary work. These are just some of the basic documents that come up that fall under the category of GNW. Tips and tools of a senior focused traveling notary. So other than just saying that I'm a senior focused notary and making myself available 24/7 in those situations of urgent medical crises, I keep certain things in my notary bag that make it really easy for me to serve that demographic. So I keep a magnifying glass in my bag for my vision challenged clients, as well as a signature guide. I am allowed to hold their hand. I'm not allowed to write it for them. I recently had a client who had tremors. She could sign her name in plenty as long as somebody held on to her arm to stop the tremors. So that's also a tool I carry with me. I'm able to assist them in that way. Ergonomic pens for my clients with arthritis or other hand issues. It's very large, it's very grippy, and it helps them to sign the paper better. And a clipboard, believe it or not, I use it very often for my bedbound clients who can't sit up and who can't get to a table to sign. So I just put the documents on the clipboard, give them the pen, and they can position the clipboard however it's convenient for them to sign. And the other things that are really important to being a senior focused notary are patience, compassion, and a heart for serving this special demographic. It's not for everybody. There's a whole lot of different factors that are involved when I'm doing a notary job for a senior individual with any other kind of challenges, memory care or whatever, memory issues or whatever it is. So you really have to have a dedication for serving this demographic, which I do. Services that I don't provide as a notary, no PennDOT tag and titles. Mobile notaries are actually not permitted by notary law to carry plates with them. So the only thing I could do is a title. Like I was telling Lisa earlier, I just don't have a heart for vehicle services. My heart is serving the senior community. So that's why I don't do tag and title service. A thing that was came into play during the pandemic was Ron, not my husband Ron, but remote online notarization, where a notary can sign on to a secure platform with a client, and they can do what's called remote online notarization. It's safe, it's secure, encrypted, all that good techie stuff. It was a really great option during the pandemic when you couldn't do in-person signings. Medallion signature guarantee, or MSG stamp. People hear the word stamp and I think they automatically think notary. But that's something that is used when you're transferring securities, and those have to be obtained from a financial institution. So I might not do these things, but I have a wide network, and my network has a wide network, so I can always have a referral for somebody who needs these things. So my latest adventure, yes, it's an adventure. My latest venture is Lancaster, PA Executor Services. I need my phone, Lisa. I have some notes on there. Sorry, can you just grab it for me? So Lancaster, PA Executor Services evolved out of Bellomo's need to offer their clients an option when they have no other option. So what that basically means is they don't have anyone in their circle of friends or family or church or whatever it is to serve on their behalf, to be their power of attorney, be their executor or their trustee. What is Lancaster, PA Executor Services? I call myself a concierge service, where I serve as power of attorney, executor, and trustee for clients who lack that option in their circle. Or they have people, but they just prefer that professional, neutral third party to handle their affairs. I tailor my services and my contract with my clients with their specific needs and within any parameters that they want to have set up. So that's why I call it a concierge service. What is a professional fiduciary? It can be an individual or a company who manages assets, makes decisions on behalf of others, ensuring that their actions are in the best interest of the person or the entity they're representing. So you can see the different things, what that role might include, and you have to adhere to a high standard of care, loyalty, and ethical conduct. People who family members who serve as in these roles aren't subject to the same scrutiny as somebody who does it as a professional service. So I have to hold myself to a higher standard than what a family member may hold themselves to. Why would somebody want or need to hire me? They might not have close family members who are suitable or available to take on these roles. They might not trust anyone in their circle to handle their affairs responsibly and ethically. Potential candidates might live far away, and that just makes it impractical and not convenient for them to serve effectively. Complex family dynamics. They may have strained or complicated relationships with family members, making it difficult to choose someone. They might not be aware of the importance of these roles and might not know who to ask. They might not have close friends who are capable or willing to take on these responsibilities. Potential candidates may be unwilling to accept the responsibility due to time, effort, and potential stress involved. Their relatives might be too old or incapacitated themselves to handle these duties. Their estate might be too complicated for those that they know to handle effectively. Or the last one, they just might prefer to appoint a professional, such as a lawyer or a professional fiduciary, to ensure impartial and expert management of their affairs. So I play as a professional fiduciary. Power of attorney, that would be financial power of attorney. And I've also recently decided to offer healthcare power of attorney, because if they don't have someone to name in a financial role, a lot of times they won't have someone to name in a healthcare role. Executor, handling the administration of the deceased estate, distributing the assets, settling all the debts. And trustee, managing and administering a variety of different types of trusts. So what are my qualifications? So 20 of the 30 years I spent in state government was in accounting, fiscal, budgeting, and bill paying roles. Decades ago, I served as a relatives power of attorney and executor. I'm a member of the professional organization that they call ADAM, and I've made their code of ethics part of my contract. I'm insured and I get a federal background check every year. And I provide proof of these things to my clients upon their request. But lastly, it's just the personal and professional relationship that I have cultivated together with the staff at Belomo. They came to me with this opportunity. We know you, we like you, we trust you. This feels like a natural progression for you to take this on for our clients. Are you willing to do that? And I didn't have to think about it long. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. So what's the process look like? So you would have an initial consultation with me, the potential client would. We would sign a contract, pay a one-time engagement fee, giving them the legal right to name me as their legal agent, executor, and trustee. Once the documents are, then I won't work with someone who's just getting their documents off the internet. Too many questions. I'm not a lawyer. To stay in my lane. So I'll only work with clients if they work with an attorney to get their documents in order, so that they can ask the attorney all their questions and any kind of scenarios that they think might come up. So I'll consult with the attorney on your estate plan. I'm willing to go with my clients because I'll eventually, if they sign with me, I'll be signing the documents along with them. So we'll meet with the attorney to sign, and then upon incapacitation, that's when I would step into an active role to manage the client's affairs as their agent or their trustee. And then upon their death, I would then step into the active role as executor of the estate to settle debts, distribute assets, and close out the estate. And 5 and 6, those services are billed at an hourly rate. That's stated in the contract, and that's separate from the engagement fee. And the engagement fee is a one-time. That's it. Anybody have any questions? Thank you very much for the opportunity. Wow, I was nervous.